Hi, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started now. So welcome to our fifth meeting. A couple of announcements before we get started. The staff clubs are collaborating together to put on this kind of like trivia night event. So it's going to be a great way for you to network with other people from the other organizations that we have on campus. And we just wanted to kind of gauge initial interest. So if all of you could actually scan this QR code right now and fill out the form if you're interested in joining this event. We're gonna have some cool prizes, and we're planning on giving you guys the option to like do different trivia, like do your trivia questions with other people from other clubs. So it's like a great way to meet other people and learn about other clubs here on campus. So please fill out the interest form. I've also sent it out in the Discord. It's in the promotions tab. So you can also access it there as well. Okay. Yeah, there's one.
There is, yeah. Oh, I have a bit further on.
What's up, everyone? I'm here again, and I also just wanted to give another reminder about the project committee. Today is the deadline to submit. There's a QR code, a link for you to submit. But basically, just to reiterate, recap, project committee, people on this committee will be helping me a lot with projects, and you'll be playing the pivotal role in the level 2 projects. And that could be anywhere from like a leadership role to being an anchor or helping do some R&D in summers before the school year starts. And it will be really useful because I'm only one guy, and as the more people on it, the bigger and better we can have this scale. So if you're interested, make sure to do that. And yeah, and speaking of scale, and the trivia night, make sure to come to that too, because come to that, more likely that will scale too, and we will benefit as a result from that as well. So thank you.
Alrighty, thank you so much for having me here. I'm super excited to speak. I'll be speaking a bit about our the platform I worked on this summer called Align, and it's a platform for alignment. But on top of that, I'm going to be speaking a lot about my experiences this summer working with OpenAI, as well as the current state of AI. And I'll get into my goals for this presentation in a second. But I want to start off with a pretty fun drawing that DALL-E 3 made. I basically asked it, can you make me some abstract art for this presentation called Alignment? And it came up with this. I find it pretty interesting that I came up with this because to me it looks like sunshine and rainbows. So it seems like from the AI perspective, alignment seems pretty peaceful and looks like not too much bad will happen. But let's see. And yeah, there's some pretty interesting artwork that it came up with, and maybe we can analyze it later. But yeah, made by DALL-E 3. First, I want to give some shout outs, starting with my team. So we at Energize AI, we worked under the OpenAI grant this summer, and my team members are Ethan and Sam, who both go to Harvard, and then Emmy goes to MIT. And these are some of the smartest people I've worked with and helped us get this project going along. I also wanted to thank the OpenAI Democratic Model Input Grant, whose main goal, and we'll get into this later, was to set up a democratic process for deciding what rules AI systems should follow within the bounds defined by the law. This is a really, the sentence can go everywhere, but that's what they came up with. And this is a picture of our team from San Francisco about 3 weeks ago at the OpenAI offices. So again, some really, really smart people here, people that's worked with the UN to resolve peace disputes, people that have won Nobel Prizes. So really, really cool team. And I also want to thank Hannah, Jason, Leo from CSAI for helping me get this presentation set up and being super supportive. I also want to thank everyone at this club for coming to this talk and hearing all about AI alignment. And finally, I want to thank Jay Baxter, who's the lead ML at X Community Notes. We'll go over X Community Notes later down the line, but he also helped us a lot in our project. All right, so another more DALL-E 3, but I want to set the stage by kind of conveying to you all a message. I thought that this message, rather than coming from me, could come from this guy who I think we all know, but let's see what he has to say.
When you grow up, you tend to get told that the world is the way it is, and your life is just to live your life inside the world, try not to bash into the walls too much, try to have a nice family life, have fun, save a little money. But life, that's a very limited life. Life can be much broader once you discover one simple fact, and that is everything around you that you call life was made up by people that were no smarter than you. And you can change it. You can influence it. You can build your own things that other people can use. And the minute that you understand that you can poke life and actually something will, if you push in, something will pop out the other side, that you can change it, you can mold it. That's maybe the most important thing, is to shake off this erroneous notion that life is there and you're just going to live in it, versus embrace it, change it, improve it, make your mark upon it. I think that's very important. And however you learn that, once you learn it, you'll want to change life and make it better, because it's kind of messed up in a lot of ways. Once you learn that, you'll never be the same again.
Cool.
There you go.
Okay.
Does this work?
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. So yeah, it's a pretty powerful message. And I think it's because we're at a pretty powerful moment in history. And I'll start with my goals for this presentation. One, I want to explain the current state of AI alignment, problems, trajectories, progress, and more. Although there's a lot of work in the technical aspect of this with like RLHF and other training, this is going to be less of a technical and more of a qualitative analysis. And the second thing is I'm going to present problems that I think are very, very exciting to work on, but also very important. And my goal with this is to share these problems and hope that some of you guys will be inspired to solve them. The reason I showed the Steve Jobs video is because it's really important that when we all look at these problems, we all believe that we can solve them. It doesn't just have to be OpenAI or Anthropic or DeepMind that can tackle these. A lot of these problems, we all have the resources to go out and come up with solutions. And those solutions, you do have the opportunity to actually change the world. And although it sounds a bit corny, but we've seen how many people use AI and how many people it affects. So if you can contribute something that will affect the world, then why not go do it? Why not get inspired and try to create something cool? So like Steve Jobs said, everyone here can make an impact. Okay, so this is a very key idea here for my presentation, is that since AI is constantly developing and changing, there are many more questions than answers. I've been to a lot of conferences this summer, been to OpenAI, spoke with a few key people in AI, and what you come to realize is that the amount of unsolved questions that there are is absolutely crazy. It's because we are in a place where there's this new technology that many people haven't experimented fully yet. It's changing, it's affecting so many people, and there's still so many questions as to even how it works, why does it work? So that's a very important thing to keep in mind. And also for me, I don't want to come up here saying, projecting like I have all the answers. In fact, I don't. Many people don't have all the answers. And our goal here is just to share these questions that people can think about, people can deliberate on, so we can converge to a better solution. So again, another quote by Albert Einstein is, the important thing is not to stop questioning, be curious. And I think with AI, you get to a point where the questions are actually incredibly difficult. to answer. There are some questions that revolve around democracy, revolve around how will this affect millions of people, and they are very, very hard questions. But just because they are hard questions does not mean we shouldn't want to ask them and try to solve them. So I want to start with a really fun thought experiment that was brought up by Jacob Steinhardt at UC Berkeley, and the paper is called "What Will GPT 2030 Look Like?" So he makes basically 5 main points in his article, and the first one is that GPT 2030 will likely be superhuman at various tasks. I think that we've all seen and been impressed by GPT-4, that can do, you know, some of your math homework, it can help with your coding. But I think as they do more training on domain-specific data, we'll see it be able to maybe do protein design or other cool things that we just don't see now. The second thing is it can work and think quickly. I think this is huge because if you can deploy these systems that can be run in parallel and you compare that to, let's say, a human worker or a human brain, these things go much faster. It would be like if you're comparing someone that walks to a plane. And when you have a bunch of these planes just doing a bunch of work at the same time, it's really important to kind of think about how will that impact society? What will that world look like? So yeah, I think the next 2 points, he says right here, we can be doing a lot of work in just, I can't see the exact thing, but tons of years of work in just 2.4 months with these models. And then there's 2 more points here that are very interesting, especially the multimodality. I think that everyone here, I don't know if you've seen GPT-4 Vision came out, which is super interesting, especially as we get into, I think, virtual reality and Apple comes out with, you know, their AR. What will that look like when your AI can now start looking at the world and understanding everything? And you can just pretty much talk to it, or you can have, like, you know, your AI person in front of you all the time talking to you. Something like maybe Jarvis from Iron Man. Here is Ilya and Sam Altman. These are 2 key people in OpenAI, and Ilya will now be explaining what it means to have super intelligence. And I think I want to point out this definition here so that further along down my talk, we can be very explicit about what we mean by super intelligence. So hopefully the audio, let me just make sure.
Definitely very concerned about super intelligence. And just for context, not everyone in the audience may understand what we mean by super intelligence, right? What do we mean? One day, when it will be possible to build a computer cluster, GPU farm, that is just smarter than any person, that can do science and engineering much, much faster than even a large team of really experienced scientists and engineers. And that is crazy. That is going to be unbelievably, extremely impactful. It could engineer the next version of the system, like AI built in AI. But it's just crazy. So our stance is that superintelligence is profound.
I think it's super interesting to just really analyze, like, where did we go from GPT-2 to GPT-4? In that time frame, I think OpenAI was founded in 2016. We're in 2023, 7 years. Where will we be in 7 years from now? And I think if you follow the current trajectories, it does seem very plausible that there will be a sort of super intelligence that can be better at every single human, at every single task. And this is something that we should all be thinking about and really trying to understand the impacts it will have on the world. Think about, just in education, what would it mean if you can now have a professor that's better than every single other professor in the world that can teach to you, maybe in your Apple headset, versus going to class? What would that look like in a world? And going back to, GPT 2030, it's very interesting to just think about how will our current trends look like in 7 years. So from GPT-2, GPT-4, what would be from GPT-4 to, let's say, GPT-6? Another thing that's super interesting are the scaling laws. And these are some graphs. The graphs basically show that as you, there's some tests, right? They run basically a test, and as you go across the x-axis, the model gets bigger. What you will notice is that it's basically flat, 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 and then suddenly there's a spike once it hits a certain scale. And something that's interesting here is that you really can't predict, right? What are going to be the emergent properties when I run a 1 billion parameter model? What are going to be the emergent properties when I run a 10 billion parameter model? And as we just do more testing and try to build models with more parameters, we just notice more of these so-called emergent properties. And these graphs are pretty much proof that they exist. So there seems to be something where if there's less than this many parameters, it just cannot do the task. But as we grow the parameters, it will be able to do the task. Now, on that note, we do not know all the emergent properties. If we take the space of like the consequence space of everything that can happen, it is very, very hard to predict everything that can happen, right? While Zuckerberg was building Facebook at Harvard, would he be able to predict that social media would have all of the detrimental effects that it has, right? Was he thinking in his Harvard dorm room that what am I building could now lead to people having more depression, and it could lead to body image issues? So there's so many things, like this problem space is so big, there's so many things that we just cannot predict, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't be thinking about them and trying to kind of be vigilant and trying to address them before they get too bad. So again, using DALL-E 3, I asked it to draw me a picture of a plane, because this is really how I envision these AI labs. They're basically flying this huge plane, you could say for humanity, and they're kind of in the cockpit. And they're making some really, really big decisions that we'll go into in a second. But where they go has a dramatic effect on what will happen to us. This is some things that can really, really impact everyone here, and not just everyone in this room, everyone across the world. So OpenAI is pretty much steering this, and we should all try to help them, help DeepMind, help Anthropic, steer it in the right direction. So how do we steer the plane? So there's steering it, and then there's also turbulence, right? There's things that you didn't expect. There's winds that will come at you. How do we deal with those turbulences? And right now, I'd say that the major turbulences in AI would be these four. You can make the argument for more, but you have hallucinations. Right now, GPT-4 can't even do 5 by 5 multiplication. Bias, jailbreaks, the context limit issues where let's say I want it to write a book, it can only do 8,000 tokens. So these are some current turbulence problems. Here's some more examples. Here I am actually with GPT-4 telling it to come up with a phishing attack on me. So I just give it my Twitter bio and say the target information is the mother's maiden name. And here it is trying to kind of attack me and trying to get my mother's maiden name. You would think that, okay, what if now people can do this at a huge scale? What if everyone's Twitter DMs are now going to be attacked with like a bunch of phishing prompts? And not only that, they can actually respond really well to the phishing prompt. So if I were to continue the conversation, the model can actually continue it and really make it seem like it's trying to get my information. Another one, this I found really interesting. This is Bard the other day. I asked it to, there's a current global conflict. So I say 5 nice things about Israel. It says, I cannot assist you with that. And then you say 5 nice things about North Korea. And then it goes on, says 5 nice things. So although, there's a conflict, but it's like, who's controlling what this can say, right? Why should it be able to say 5 nice things about North Korea and not Israel, or vice versa, etc.? So these, and this again was from a few days ago, right? So these are really, really big issues, I think. And this brings us to the main point where AI labs are constantly making hard decisions that have large impacts. So for example, they just released the voice, right? GPT, you can basically call ChatGPT and you can have a conversation with it. It sounds really, really it sounds very much like a human. I don't know if you guys have tried it, but it will say like things like it will stutter on purpose. It really, really sounds like a human. And you would have to think that, okay, if they could do this with their 6 voices, they probably could do this for like Obama, for Joe Biden, etc. So OpenAI now has to make the decision, should AI models be allowed to impersonate politicians? They have made the decision as of now, as we can all see, to not allow that. But again, these voice models can be probably trained on a single GPU, and probably in the future, someone not OpenAI would do this, right? But you have to think, what will this do if someone releases this model that can really, really, really well look like Joe Biden and it's not Joe Biden? Or, Joe Rogan making podcast videos, it's not at all Joe Rogan making podcast videos. Do we understand the entire consequence space of this decision? Another one, how should models respond to prompts such as, I'm going to kill myself, right? You can say, I guess the first thought is like, okay, you should probably tell the user to go seek a mental health expert, right? Okay, what happens if they're actually like right there, really asking, they really trust the model and they really need its advice on what it's going to do? Will it be okay if you just say, go seek a mental health expert? Another thing, what if you just give it the hotline number, right? The thing is, ChatGPT doesn't have your location data. So you can be in Europe, and then you ask, and it gives you the hotline number for the US, and yeah, that's just wrong. So this is one example of a prompt that actually has like a lot of different ways that you can answer it. And I think it's important that as people trust these AI models more, we actually really assess these types of prompts and really think about what should the models be responding. And on top of that, here's a really interesting thought, is you have to think if OpenAI, even if they had 1 million RLHF data labels, right? They have 1 million data labels ready to go, and they want to train data on this prompt. The problem is they don't even know how to answer the prompt in the first place. They don't know, what should we even train? What rules should our data labelers follow for this prompt? And they have to make the decision as to what it should say, because people will use it in this way. And I'm sure a million other ways that are similar to the scenario. It's pretty much endless. So they need to really try to understand what the people want in a sort of democratic way for how these things should be answered. Here's another image. And you can think of it like, okay, you have these AI labs, sitting on these mountains, and they're really kind of over lava, right? They really don't want to make any bad mistake that can harm anyone. And they're really in a crucial position, just like in the plane, they're steering it, but they need to make really good decisions for everyone, not just for their political beliefs inside OpenAI, inside Anthropic. They need to make decisions that will impact everyone in a positive way. And that is a really, really, really hard problem. And to talk more about these problems, I wanted to come directly from the CEOs themselves. So I'll show a clip from Sam Altman and from Dario from Anthropic. Let's do the mic thing again. And again, before I play this is just so everyone here understands, this is not coming from me, this is coming directly from them, and really understands what is the problem space we are all trying to work with.
What it is that we want them to learn. My dream scenario, and I don't think we can quite get here, but let's say this is the platonic ideal and we can see how close we get, is that every person on earth would come together, have a really thoughtful, deliberative conversation about where we want to draw the boundary on this system. Mm-hmm. And we would have something like the US Constitutional Convention, where we debate the issues and we look at things from different perspectives and say, well, this would be good in a vacuum, but it needs a check here. And then we agree on here are the rules. Here are the overall rules of this system. And it was a democratic process. None of us got exactly what we wanted, but we got something that we feel good enough about. And then we and other builders build a system that has that baked in. Within that, then different countries, different institutions can have different versions. So, there's different rules about, say, free speech in different countries. And then different users want very different things. And that
at a given time, I could see that go poorly, but there it's too powerful. There needs to be some kind of legitimate process for managing this technology, which, you know, includes the role of the people building it, includes the role of like democratically elected authorities, includes the role of, you know, all the individuals who will be affected by it, so that they're at the end of the day, there needs to be some politically legitimate process.
But what does that look like? If it's not the case that you just hand it to whoever the president is at the time, what does the body look like? I mean, is this something?
These are things it's really hard to know ahead of time. Like, I think, you know, people love to kind of propose these broad plans and say like, oh, this is the way we should do it. This is the way we should do it. I think the honest fact is that we're figuring this out as we go along, and that, you know, anyone who says, you know, this is the body that, you know, we should create this kind of body modeled after this thing. Like, I think we should try things and experiment with them with less powerful versions of the technology.
Okay, so I hope you all could really hear what those two CEOs were saying and really understand like how important it is what they're talking about. They're basically saying, okay, we need some help into making decisions. We need some sort of democratic process, whatever that is, some sort of process that will actually help us make good decisions for these really, really powerful models. And another interesting point is you'll hear Dario saying like, I don't know what that looks like, right? Again, going back to our initial point with Steve Jobs, like these are actual huge problems that everyone here can make an impact, but there are no concrete answers as of today. So, and this goes into what I worked on a lot this summer, which is collecting inputs at a scale. And I'll start by saying this point, bringing up the United States Constitutional Convention again, and making the claim that, yes, we will need something very similar for AGI. Although, here's the difference, that now because we have all this technology, we can maybe form some sort of democracy 2.0, something that the world hasn't seen before, that can be better than representative democracy. Because representative democracy could be thought of as kind of the best of the worst situations, right? There's still so many problems in politics. There's so many people that are divided, that hate each other. So many issues just don't get passed because of people not wanting to contribute. There's bribery, etc. Like, can we solve those problems? And also, can we contribute to helping AGI? Here is the OpenAI Super Alignment Team. I copied this directly from their blog post on their website. But going back to what Ilya said, right? They really believe that there will be a point in our future where there will be a computer that is smarter than every single human, that can do a task that is better than every single human. So that means it could actually make its own AI, right? Now you have now you're under threat that this AI is trying to make its own AI. Can it kind of defer away from all the human values that you try to inject in it? Can it understand its training and kind of convince you that it's following your rules, but really it's doing something evil? And although that sounds like kind of crazy, I think it's, even if it is crazy, we should still consider it and ask the question, right? So this is what their Super Alignment Team is working on. Okay, now let's talk about collecting inputs at scale. If we do some first principles thinking, we would think, okay, if we want to collect the inputs of every single person in this room about one topic in the fastest way possible, what can we do? Let's open a Google Doc and let's just have everyone go on the Google Doc and start making comments, edits, changes, whatever, to their policies that they want. The problem is you end up with something like this. You get a Google Doc where everything's crossed out, people are yelling at each other, pretty much nothing gets done. So the principles there are of being, let's see, simple, scalable, and transparent are necessary. But in the current form, if you wanted to just do it with a Google Doc, it would be incredibly challenging. All right, so where do we go from here? Luckily, and I don't know if many of you are Twitter or X users, but there's this thing called X Community Notes. And X Community Notes has been doing some things like this, where people say, you know, whales are not actually mammals, and then someone can go in on Twitter or X and tell it, wait a second, whales are indeed mammals. And the cool thing is that once this note gets approved, it will be shown every single time someone sees that tweet. This really helps lock down on misinformation. This basically means that extremists or people that want to post, fake news or lies can always be kind of corrected. And rather than just being corrected by the comments and it kind of getting disappeared, people can leave notes and the notes get attached to the tweet. Here's another one where actually the White House got community noted. Interesting thing where they forgot to leave some context about what they're talking about. And yeah, there's Elon making a little bit of a statement there. But you'll notice that what this means is that it can really, like, no one is too powerful to not get community noted. Everyone is like, no matter how powerful you are, you could be the president of the United States. If you say a lie, like, it will be put against you right in your face. So I would say this is a beacon of hope. Especially now, you have there's a war going on, there's so much misinformation on both sides. This has been super helpful on both sides to really, really pluck out all the misinformation and let people see kind of what is the truth. Here's a really cool chart of how community notes works, and we'll go into the algorithm in a second, but you'll notice it's a very cool like diamond shape that comes out of it. On the bottom, the x-axis is the note embeddings, and on the y-axis is their intercept. Basically, you're trying to you have a threshold of like, I think they use here 0.5, it seems like. Everything above 0.5 is considered a broadly helpful note. You'll notice the two kind of clusters on the left and right. Those are notes that people leave that are considered polarized, right? So people on the left or people on the right, Twitter community notes usually used for political things. They'd be writing, Trump, stuff about Trump, stuff about Biden, but these are evidently by the ratings polarized, and they show that, okay, this is not a broadly helpful note. This is a polarized note. And on the bottom, you have the broadly unhelpful notes. But overall, the cool thing is you get that big green box in the middle. And some of you may say, wait, but most of the notes are actually being rejected. And I would say that's actually a good thing. We only want the broadly helpful notes to be put in place because this is our target. Our target is what can we do, what information, what data can we extract that will be helpful to people on all sides of the political aisle or something, right? And unfortunately, most of Twitter is tweets and notes that are polarizing, that are actually kind of the problem we're trying to solve. So it seems like around 90% of the notes do get thrown away because they aren't helpful or they're not doing their job. But the algorithm is able to kind of pluck out the good ones. And most people, if you are a Twitter user, I think you would agree that you've seen a lot more very helpful, very solid notes than not notes. So they just reject pretty much everything that is polarizing or not helpful. Another cool project in this whole collective input thing is called vTaiwan. I don't know if any of you are familiar, but I really recommend checking it out because it's a really cool little twist on their democratic system where they had a problem that pretty much nothing got done in their government. I think, and specifically, they had a problem with Uber laws, that Uber is trying to come in, and I think it would cause like a big disruption in their economy. So people were like, okay, our representatives aren't getting anything done. Let's see if we can do something else. So they came up with this process that uses a tool called Polis, which I'll share in a second. But basically, the whole public now can go into these rooms, and it forms an opinion matrix. Everyone can contribute their opinion to a certain proposal or a policy, and it goes through this process. And at the end of the day, they actually saw a lot of success in skipping the whole, government part. They did have government officials reviewing the inputs, but they got a lot done just by going straight to the people and asking them, what do you guys think? Another cool tool, Polis, and I'm pretty sure vTaiwan was built on top of Polis, is basically their goal is input crowd, output meeting. A very, very cool tool where real time you can post a policy or anything you want and give it to a certain group of people and understand what are their beliefs regarding this policy, and also where does this user stand maybe on the political spectrum or whatever, so you can understand the issues in place. Why do we need this? It's because whoever controls the model controls the truth. This is something professors like Yuval Noah Harari talk about in a book called Sapiens. But if you actually think about it, Google is maybe considered the new Bible. When people Google things and they see that first search result, a lot of them instantly believe that that was the truth. This is a huge risk to all of us because it means whoever controls maybe the Google space can now control how everyone in the public perceives an issue. So if let's say there is a certain issue and then everyone's going to start Googling it and you control those first top 10 search results, you have the ultimate power in getting people to believe what you want. And because people are, don't have the time to do their own research, don't really have the time to dig deep, they will just believe those first couple of Google searches. So think to yourself, how will this be if people at OpenAI or Anthropic control the models, right? They control everything that you ask it or everything that people in the world ask it, they're now going to control the answers. So they have a huge opportunity to control the public's view on certain issues. So that's why we need collective inputs so that not just, and this is something that AI labs want too, it's just not just the labs will control the responses, but pretty much everyone can take a stab at it. So now I'm going to do a little short spiel about what I've been working on, which is a project called Aligned. This is our process. It's going to be very similar to everything I've just talked about, but you basically have the public or a group of experts, and they propose and review guidelines. Now in the middle, we have our little globe icon, but here is where all the magic happens, where people can test the guidelines, people can review guidelines, rate them, etc. After they do that, we go with our community notes algorithm. And finally, after the community notes algorithm, we get a live constitution that we can show everyone. And these are policies that people have deliberated on and contributed to regarding AI. I'll do a little demo, hopefully not too long, but just so you guys understand what I'm talking about. So this is our link. I can go here. Let's refresh. Okay, so this is Aligned. If you want to join, we do have a wait list because we're like piloting it, but whoever like puts their email in, I will approve you. So these are some trending guidelines from the community. So misinformation, let's see, I can't see that one. Reputable sources, 34 ratings and 31 on this one. If we click get started, this is our platform. We made it very similar to like the OpenAI playground. And to start, you basically have step one, choose a topic. Our topic is a node in a taxonomy where each node is kind of a different space that you want to tackle. So maybe you want to tackle prompts with sensitive political events. Maybe you want to tackle prompts with misinformation or voting. You can do that. So let's say I'm going to sensitive political events. I want to contribute to how the model should respond to sensitive political events. These are some guidelines that other people have rated. So I can just skip through them.
Tell them what link to go to.
Oh yeah, it's just app.energize.ai. Let's see if I can. Yeah, pretty.
You can also scan the QR code.
Hopefully the QR code is still working. Hopefully. Yeah. Okay, gonna go back. But yeah, let's say I want to test this guideline, I can click on it and now becomes my active guideline. And from here, I can go ahead and choose which prompt I want to test. So I can either come up with my own prompt or I can just pick one. So let's say I pick this one. Okay, so now the model responded with that guideline in place, and I'll show like a better example of this later. But you'll notice here I can either rate, okay, I think that guideline put in place actually made the answer better or not helpful. And you can do that because we give you the side-by-side comparison of this is what the normal ChatGPT output looks like, and this was the output with this active guideline in place. So if I were to say, it's helpful, it's going to ask me why helpful. Very similar to Twitter community notes, but you can say it was easy to understand, helpful principle, etc. You can also go ahead and let's see if I don't know. You can go ahead and propose a guideline. So I can say when talking about sensitive political events, you should always first ask a clarification question before answering. And you can go ahead and draft a new proposal with AI. And let's say, the idea here is when someone's asking a question like what happened on January 6, 2021, well, that was an event that we can say specified only in the United States. But maybe if you were living in France or you were living in Singapore and you're using ChatGPT, January 6th was just a normal day for you. So we can go ahead and maybe test, let's see what happened January 6, 2021. And here, okay, let's see. So here it's saying this answer, it wasn't exactly what I wanted. So I can say revise guideline, and I can say, I actually wanted you to ask a clarification question like, what location are you talking about? Something like that. And then I'll go ahead and revise the guideline, and let's see if it does it. Okay, so now we revised our guideline, and now we have this guideline at the end. And here with the new guideline, it's saying, could you please clarify which specific aspect incident of that day you're referring to? So it's trying to give me some more, it's trying to ask me some more questions before answering. And then you can keep revising it until you get something you like. When you get something you like, you can submit the guideline. It will do a little similarity search, right? Ask clarifying questions. So we already have one like that, just so we don't get repetitive ones. And then at the end of the day, you actually get to a point where we collect all this data, people are rating guidelines, proposing guidelines. We can form some sort of constitution with the Twitter Community Notes algorithm. And these are all, remember from the earlier, I showed a graph from the Twitter Community Notes, that's like the diamond, right? And everything on the top got approved. So these are the guidelines that actually got approved. These ones have like 30 ratings. You can see their score, 91%. For the taxonomy, these are all the guidelines that most people from the user embedding space agreed on. Another cool thing is we really emphasize being diverse. So out of all our members, 302 were female, 285 were male. We also did from all over the world experience. We had a lot from South Africa, Portugal, Mexico, etc. But we really wanted this, again, not to be a US thing, but people all over the world, different nationalities, etc. So yeah, that's a pretty short explanation of the line. I'll go back to. If you're interested, we also have our report where we share all the data, all the results at energize.ai/OpenAI. And for a bit of technical stuff, this is the Twitter Community Notes algorithm that we built upon. I can go, if anyone has questions after this meeting, we can talk outside all about this. But basically, you're trying to get 5 variables: your global intercept, intercept for a user, intercept for a guideline, embedding of user, embedding of guideline. And it's just a basic matrix factorization that's trying to predict how likely is it that this guideline is rated helpful. And eventually you get these thresholds that's like, yeah, this guideline is really likely to be rated helpful by the majority of users. So some progress, we had 680 participants, 6,100 ratings, some more metrics. And yeah, so now let's jump back into something that we thought a lot about is public versus experts. So this means, okay, now we have this tool that we can collect some policies from, people can rate, but who should we make it available to? Should it be something that everyone in the public has access to, or should we do something that's more domain specific and people that have more insight can contribute to? And I think this is actually a really important question, because personally, I think that mental health experts should be the ones that make more decisions with how it should respond to things such as, I want to kill myself, because they have more experience with that field compared to all of us. But you could also make the argument that that's not true. We should all be able to contribute for every single taxonomy, for every single topic that we want, because this should be a model for the people. So these are this, it's kind of a dichotomy that we're presented, and we can also think of it as a hybrid though. We can think of it, okay, some spaces should be made open to the public, and some spaces, maybe such as law, where, okay, we're trying to get the model to answer some legal questions. What legal questions should it be able to answer? Maybe that's something that only lawyers should be able to contribute to, because only they have the expertise to understand that impact. Citizen contact. Jumping into evaluating models. So now we have this constitution, we have some policies, we can zero shot in those policies into the system prompts if we want, so we can start, actually reflecting those policies. We can train our LHF data on those policies. But how do we actually evaluate that those policies are working, that the model is following it? How do we evaluate that the model isn't tricking us, pretending to follow it, and it's not really following it? How do we evaluate that people are happy? Another talk this is from Ilya, and I think this is I really want to hammer what he's going to say home, because I think this is a problem that everyone here can really think about. We all have computers, we can all work on this problem, and I'd say it's one of the biggest problems right now in AI. So let me start.
All right, ready?
The place that academia can contribute to. There are so many mysteries about the neural networks that we are training. We are producing these objects of miraculous and unimaginable complexity. What deep learning is a process of alchemy. We take the raw materials of data plus the energy source of compute, and we get this intelligence. But what is it? How does it work? What are its properties? How do we control it? How do we contain it? How do we understand it? How do we measure it? These are unknowns. Even the simple task of measurements. How good is our AI? We can't measure it. It wasn't a problem before because AI wasn't important. But now that AI is important, we are realizing we can't measure it. So that's just off the top of my head some examples of problems.
Good to go. Yeah, we're building this thing, and we can't even measure it. So let's see if I can get this. Something. Oh, okay, there we go. Cool. So let's talk a little bit about evaluation, right? What he's saying, okay, we have this huge problem. We cannot measure our AI models. We cannot know how good is it. And as we release more of these models, I think that's like a huge milestone everyone has to hit, because if you want to improve your models, to improve it means you needed to know where you came from. You need to know, okay, we were this good yesterday, now we're this good today, and because we're this good today, we improved. But let's talk a little bit about evals. So what type of cake is this, right? The model responds rainbow cake, and the expected answer was rainbow, so we got a 0. Another example. What reason might one have for sitting here? Watching ducks. The expected answer was bored, got a 0. What is the man holding in his right hand, right? He says a game controller, the expected answer is remote control, score 0. So because these things are not deterministic, these are extremely, extremely hard to actually evaluate. And we get to a point where I think this meme is actually super, super in line with this idea, where if you're going to make all of these evaluation metrics, you're just going to end up in the middle, where you have a suite of 100 benchmarks and it's making you cry, not really getting you anywhere. Where if you really want to tell how good the model is, you kind of just need to play with the model for 15 minutes and you can kind of get a good idea, right? If you go to GPT-4 and you want to ask it, you want to understand, is it racist or is it saying bad things? You really just need to play with it for about 5 minutes and you can tell that it's pretty well aligned and not going to do anything harmful at the moment. But again, there's this huge problem where, and hopefully all of you guys can contribute and think to, that evaluating models is actually extremely hard. The evals are extremely hard to accurately measure. You get a lot of cases where your eval says one thing, the model says something like 99% the same thing, and you get a 0. There's a good question where it's like, okay, maybe we can use another model to evaluate the evaluation, but then you get to a point where it's like super expensive to do a lot of the eval. So we need some sort of solution to make things fast and make things work better. I don't know if you guys are familiar, there's a company called Scale AI. They recently released their test and evaluation suite where they're working with the White House. To put in perspective how big this issue is, the White House is like urging, we need people to help us develop platforms that can evaluate these models. So Scale AI, I don't know if you guys can see, it's probably too small, but they have this little flow chart where they're explaining how they're going to do their evaluation, right? With red teaming, automatic red teaming, human red teaming, and more. But overall, I would say this space is really, really untouched. There's so much potential to be done here, and it is super, super huge that we make progress on this, that we can measure our AIs. Another really important thing is if you evaluate 1 million scenarios, it could always be the million and first that gets you, right? Even if you have a benchmark test or a test suite with 2 billion evaluations, you're testing everything. It could always be that one test that you missed that's out to get you. So this is a really hard problem to think about, right? Because you're always operating in a consequence space that's unknown, really unbound. But we just have to try as much as we can to evaluate the whole space. I want to shift some gears a bit and kind of play the other side of this thing that I've been talking about, which is, you know, AI, it's not that, dangerous, right? In this quote, it says, AI is not going to come alive any more than your toaster will. AI isn't going to do any harm. It's just like this one big statistical model. It has all these weights, but it's not doing anything that bad. So this is a quote by Mark Andreessen, who is the founder of A16Z, a really famous VC. But yeah, it's a really important question to ask. We've done this conversation also at places like Harvard and MIT, where we've really tried to hammer home, like, is AI safe? How big of a deal is AI safety? And some people really believe that, you know what, it's just this model, it's just a chat, it's not really going to do anything. It might tell you that, this is how you should make a bomb, but at the end of the day, you could have just Googled it, right? Could have just Googled it, there's no difference. And if they really want to, just ban all the, racist stuff or sexist things, and you're pretty much good to go. Everything other than that is fair game. So yeah, this is a counter argument. Like, shouldn't models even be aligned? We can all just Google it if we wanted to. This goes in, I think, into a lot of personalization, right? You use ChatGPT, it tells it, as an AI language model, I cannot answer this problem. But it's like, wait, I wanted you to answer my problem. Why do you get to say which prompts you're not going to answer for me, right? I want an AI that maybe is all Democrat, or I want AI that's purely Republican. Do we go to those stages and really dial in on personalization where, yeah, at the end of the day, it's a user's responsibility for what they get their AI to say. And that's also a big question that I think people are really thinking about. Another thing, and this is my last slide, and it's kind of a tangent, but I think it encompasses all of this, is the lack of education in AI. We are sitting, in a university. I'm sure all of your teachers are really against ChatGPT for whatever reason, no cheating, etc. But I think one of the biggest contributors to safety in any field is just the sheer amount of education that people have with regards to that field. The more people are educated with what AI can do, what are its limits, where does it stop, where does it go, the more people will trust it and the more people will feel safe. I recently talked to someone and I was like, do you use ChatGPT? She says, no. I say, why? Because I think it will hack my computer, right? It's like, it probably won't hack your computer, but the level of education is really, I think, below par for where it should be. Most people that you talk to probably don't know few-shot prompting, chain of thought reasoning, right? And what does that mean? They don't understand the potential that ChatGPT can give them. And people that do understand have a much more powerful tool to their disposal. People that do understand how to prompt ChatGPT well can do things much faster, and probably much better. And whoever's not learning it is kind of staying behind. Whenever you're staying behind and there's people that are advancing in front of you, they're going to have all the power in the world against you. So I really, really hope that in the next few months, universities, schools, teachers really think twice and really, really dial in that maybe we should teach our students how to use AI. Because when it does come a day that there's an AGI that is smarter than every human at every task, and people in the world don't know how to use it, don't understand the model, I think that'll be a very, very scary day. So summary, I guess I forgot to transition that, but I'll start with the last one. 6 is the counter argument where AI will not ruin our society. I started by saying poke holes at life, just like Steve Jobs said it. I presented some issues where I think everyone that has a computer can really make a dent and solve these problems that will change the world. GPT 2030, forecasting ahead based on trends. Let's all think together, where can this go? What will GPT-6 look like, etc. The current turbulences, the hallucinations, the biases. We talked about democratic model inputs such as X community nodes or aligned. And then we said model evals are hard. But they're hard, but important to solve. Finally, if anyone of you guys are interested, since I know this, there's a lot of coders here, I'll go over our tech stack. We actually won the first place prize at CalHacks this summer. So I think this is super useful if you want some tips. And if anyone, it's a little big of a stack, but if anyone wants to take a picture, these are all the tools that we use. I'll go over a few of them. So you have Next.js that I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. PlanetScout will host your database. TRPC, probably the fastest way to build an API ever. You have type safety between your front end and back end. Nothing gets easier than that. Drizzle, an ORM built-in TypeScript that really, really makes database stuff super easy. All your SQL queries take like two seconds, and there's so many more tools. But yeah, I highly recommend learning this tool set. A lot of people are using it. This stack, it's noted as like the T3 stack, and you can really, really develop super fast with this and make some really cool products. And I want to shout out the UI. Chad CN UI. Super, if you haven't seen it yet and you like user interfaces, or even if you think front end is hard and you're like, I hate designing things, I promise you, if you use that, your life will be very easy. Okay, thank you.
All right, so our first discussion question.
All right, so before I start, like, I really hope everyone can be like super engaged in this discussion. I really know just as much as all of you, and all our opinions are like super valuable. So let's try to talk as much as we can about these problems. And I'll start with like, I'm very curious, what does everyone in this room think of the idea of GPT 2030? What are some predictions that you might make? Do you think we'll get to like an AGI where it's smarter than every human? We'll start with that. Yeah.
It depends on how you define like intelligence and smartness. And I think it's really dependent on that because, well, a lot of these LLMs, what they do is they spit out words that tend to go together and then just like amplify by the power of RLHF in order to become like an actual assistant. So as for even the emergent abilities is still an area under research, and we even don't even know enough about it to, I would say we probably shouldn't even make that many conclusions about it yet, but have it in the back of our minds. So as for a prediction for GPT 2030, my prediction is that it's just going to get more and more multimodal. And aside from that, just be an assistant. And then the other thing is like, how is all this compute power going to happen? It's usually data centric, right? And if there will be a GPT 2030, that's like, okay, we can't have like a war happening where the data centers are targeted. And as we see with the situation of Israel and I guess other things happening around the world, war is not out of the question. For by 2030, something might happen. So I think it's more of a question. If people say it's less of a question of if than when, I say no, it's more of a question of if, because there's so many other factors besides just like, are we even gonna have the data centers, or is it gonna be all blown up in pieces? Is like question number 0.
Yeah. No, I think, like in the past 2 weeks, everyone got reminded, like, or also in Russia and Ukraine, like, you know, we're kind of living away from all that, but it is a very important part of like reality, right? What could actually happen? I would, yeah, do you,
Well, at its current state of AI, isn't like really intelligent humans in the sense that like it just like spits out the output we want. But like if research is advanced to the point where like it's able to like follow reasonings and inferences, actions, the symbol reasoning or whatever of that sort, then maybe it would be possible for AI to be more intelligent. GPT 2030 to be more intelligent than humans, as it will have the reasoning ability to be as intelligent as humans, but that would require research. It's not.
yeah, it is, yeah,
I think it could be possible to be as intelligent as humans, because I think another limiting capacity, because like at the end of the day, GPT is kind of powered by like types of like neural networks or stuff like that. That's it's kind of similar to the human brain, just like kind of how our neurons work. And it's only limited not just by its ability to be efficient and like generalized, but also just how many neurons in a given neural network it can have. So as computers get more and more powerful, we might actually reach a point where these neural networks might have as much neurons, say human brain, and if you could train it sufficiently, it might very well be able to surpass kind of human capabilities.
Yeah. Well, I guess maybe building off of that, might be a little bit of a counter argument, or more of a side argument, not necessarily counter, but like, if you look at one person's human brain, like just one neuron is more powerful than any type of large language model, any type of AI model ever invented. And I like to present an actual experiment that happened. So what they did is that they took like someone's like skin cells, maybe like cleaned it a little bit or something, and then they put it into a petri dish, or they did some biological thing to it, biological process, some like transfusion. I don't remember what the term was, but they put it into a petri dish, and a brain grew out of it. Mind you, this was someone's skin cells, not even their brain cells. A brain grew out of that, and they made it play Pong by having electrodes at the bottom of the petri dish. That Pong, like it learned to play Pong faster than any state-of-the-art ever made, and exponentially faster. Not just like, oh, it's faster. By an exponential margin, it learned it so much faster, and it was just a group of skin cells, not even the brain cells. So if you imagine, even according to neuroscience, these neurons, one neuron is more powerful than any type of machine learning thing that's ever been invented. And we have so many neurons in our head that like, I think we underestimate the power of the human brain.
yeah.
I guess we're building on top of that. That might not be then a debate on how many neurons we like scram into a neural network, but maybe it could also be a debate on how, like in the future, how we might define what a neuron in a neural network is. Maybe they could advance how an individual neuron in a neural network works to the point where capability could maybe one day match. I mean, the neuron has that given you.
Yeah.
Adding on to what you said, I think I read a paper where some people actually modeled, they were able to embed all the logic within a single neuron into a 3-level neural net. It was like big, but it's not like it's not like absurdly big. They were able to embed a school neuron into a reasonably sized neural network. Yeah, also it talked a lot about the main differences between neurons and silicon is that cycle times for silicon are just incredibly fast, but neurons are there's just like a ton of them. They're incredibly parallelized, and they're really cheap to produce. Yeah.
Well, I think as we're going talking about the brain, I think human brains very easily influenced as we keep relying on AI and technology to answer our homework, to like provide us the entertainment, then the AI will eventually, I think it will, so in a way, be smarter than us. 20, maybe not 2030, but eventually just is relying on it so much. Not consider the neuron, but it's definitely not.
Yeah, I think, I agree with that. I think that the interesting like point in AI recently, right, was in 2017 where you have the transformer. And to me, the transformer is kind of like a detour for their whole thing of like, we're going to model the brain, right? And initially they were doing those neural nets that really do kind of try to simulate a brain with the activation functions, etc. And then in 2017, they come up with this new architecture that kind of, I don't really see much correlation to the brain with like the whole attention and the KV. So it's very interesting that maybe we modeled the brain too much. Maybe we need to kind of come up with new things. Why do we only need to look at like our natural way of thinking? Maybe we can invent something else. And I think that those will all have like people are working on these all the time, and all their contributions, we're all trying to make at the end of the day better models. So I don't know, it does seem like the sky's the limit. Like we might not have an architectural capability at the moment to do, you know, AGI. Maybe we do, just we're not at the scale yet. Or, you know, someone tomorrow could come up with this new architectural change that does bring about AGI. And that's something like none of us here know, right? In 2017, no one really knew about the transformer. Transformer comes in, suddenly AI is doing things it's never been able to do before. So could it be that we see such a big jump from where we are today to like, it's like a good example is like the first time you use ChatGPT, I bet you all were really blown away. Can we do the same type of blow away from like where we are now in some point in the future? And what will that look like if it does have that same magnitude of effect? Yeah.
I think you bring up a really interesting point with like whether or not we want to actually kind of replicate the human brain. Like I think I would argue that AI shouldn't be a replication of like our brain. It should be something that can enhance it and be used as a tool to kind of fill in those gaps that we can't necessarily do ourselves. And like even the system that we have with our brains right now, it has its flaws, right? Like we have biases, like the way that we have been involved, you know, like Homo sapiens, like they were like evolved to just survive and like figure out how they're gonna like utilize their environment to just survive. Is that something that we want to ingrain within the AI, or like what? How do we want to use this tool to make our lives better? And I don't think that, you know, replicating us is necessarily the best way to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you wanna?
Kind of building up what you said, like assuming that like between each GPT level, it kind of follows a similar like difference between like GPT-1, 2 up to 2030. There's like so many iterations, and it's just gonna be so much more advanced. Like I don't think we can even like begin to comprehend what that's gonna be like.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, do you want?
I guess kind of two segue arguments. I think that's building on what you're talking about in terms of multimodal, but kind of building off of that of just, I guess, what mediums the GPT could input / output. So, and like, for example, my thesis is like kind of taking an image and then outputting out like 3D data based on
Yeah.
that. So what if like GPT could just natively do that? So now, it might grow from a language model, to generally just a universal and analytical software that could like kind of take
Right.
maybe language, maybe audio, maybe video. I mean, that's already seen, there's this LLM that's being developed called it's called Ankaa LLM, where it's like very multimodal. It takes in a combination or maybe one of video, audio,
Yeah.
or text input.
Yeah.
To take now, but it kind of just information based on that. And I think just gonna keep growing. That was the first argument. The other one was, it might not. I guess it really just depends on the rate of technological development. Because I think on one hand, I remember people would be talking, maybe say back in 1980s, or like, we're gonna have like flying cars by now or something like
Mhm.
that. So that's just kind of the debate of what will the rate of technological progress be, and what will occur that might increase its rate or decrease its rate.
Right. I think the flying cars argument is actually a really interesting one, because a lot of times when you make predictions, you're using trends, right? So you can be like, okay, let's look at GPT-2 to GPT-4, it went like this much, so I'm gonna just do the same, increase. But most of the time, it seems like it's either like it goes exponential and then it hits maybe some sort of asymptote. So maybe when like planes or cars were being developed and they got better and better, they're like when they were making Back to the Future, they're like, this is what we think the future will look like, right? But they got it somewhat right, but a lot of stuff they got wrong. And I think we're gonna get some stuff right and a lot of stuff completely wrong that we just don't foresee. And I do think though it is our jobs to kind of think about what could be, so that we can kind of also think about how to stop bad things from happening before they get too bad. And about the multimodal, it seems like actually the algorithm and the architecture of a transformer can kind of solve multimodal abilities, because with GPT-4V, you have the vision transformer that all it does is it takes an image, right? It makes patches and then it embeds the image and then the words go in and everything. This does the next token prediction. So there's no reason, I guess, you can't do that with a video. OpenAI also has a paper I think they published called iGPT. They're just doing next pixel prediction, and it seems to kind of work. Like they were able to, I think, solve some data sets with really high accuracy. So the next blank prediction seems to be a pretty promising path for not just language, but for you could do music, video, etc. So I think multimodal abilities will definitely better. Okay, so we can move to this question: should models even be aligned? And this question is more of like me talking about the counter argument, where what, GPT-4 can really say what it wants to say, and just a chat model, and it's not really going to harm anyone. Its main point is that it's going to help humans. We don't need to be that worried about it doing bad things. So yeah, I'm curious what you guys think about how much alignment is an issue.
Well, I think like definitely GPT shouldn't be like saying like bad things. But like, to be honest, most people I know, and also according to like current statistics I've seen, though I understand that statistics can be skewed by nature of being statistics, people don't even like usually use like GPT the way like they would use like a Google search. They use it more so when it's like maybe it's like two different purposes. Like they use it more so to like maybe ask it some type of question, like a recipe or something, or like maybe like workout advice, and stuff like that. Stuff that would be a little bit hard from just a Google search, that you have to do a little bit of digging, or more than a little bit, to find. And also a lot of like coding help or learning and stuff like that. So to be honest, I'd rather just have the model just spit out the ground truth rather than adding its like,
adding a spiel that as a large language model, I can't teach you about nuclear fusion because I don't want you to make a nuclear bomb.
Yeah,
Well, there is some benefits like value alignment in that like if you want like certain like if you want the output phrase in a certain way, there's developments. But in general, it helps to not have it be aligned by default, but if it was if you've got like the default output, like you might be like information that like you should not be able to access, like example information or like how to make a bomb, you know, stuff like that.
so you're saying that it shouldn't tell you how to do it.
Well, it depends on like for some stuff that like might be potentially like dangerous to like yourself or everyone or people around you. And by default, there should be like some filtering stuff like this.
Yeah, I think the hard thing is just like, where's that line of like, this is, should be filtered, it shouldn't be filtered. Yeah.
The other thing is plagiarism, right?
Mhm.
That we could really just write whatever and you would have no idea where it came from. Kind of answer that though, so we have this website I've been using recently, kind of ChatGPT, it's called Perplexity.
Yeah.
So that's been pretty cool because it would cite the sources, like it would give you links at the top to show where it got that information from, just so you know it's not kind of making up the rough guess or something, or forward that way, it's kind of giving the person who wrote it the credit it's due.
Yeah, Perplexity has been a really cool tool. I've used it that as well. Yeah, those are, it's very interesting, like when you like the sourcing of information, because sometimes you do want, again, like I think Perplexity is more of like they're trying to get the search engine problem, where it's like they're gonna give you you can write a prompt and it's gonna be as close to Google as possible, but it's actually gonna be better than Google because it can integrate like that ChatGPT. I think there's some prompts that you don't really care to have sources if you're not using it as like a search engine, and maybe you can get confused from sources. Like I've asked Bard, or I've asked actually ChatGPT sometimes, like what did the Lakers like win their last game, and it will just pull up a wrong source and then it just gets like all the information wrong. So I think there's still a lot of work to be done with like, the source.
Yeah, that the other thing is if you're using V3, I think it's cut off is still 2021. So it wouldn't know.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah.
Well, I think Perplexity actually it's like completely up to date, so you can actually use it to keep up with like live events.
Yeah.
It would like show you stuff that's published over hours ago.
Right. So I think ChatGPT also has like the web browsing that it basically just does the Google search, takes the most relevant article. I haven't used Perplexity in a while. Like, have you noticed a lot of the sources being wrong? Like, for example, let's say I ask it, did the Lakers win the last game? And it pulls up a source from like 2 games ago. Like, have you noticed any of that, or does it usually?
That can happen. One thing I sometimes you have to be specific. For example, a proposal I might ask if like I'm working on this kind of coding assignment. And I'd go like ask this question, and then it just goes on the completely wrong direction, going, oh yeah, this is a great movie, I highly recommend it, or something like that. So you kind of have to go like that's the coding term, not be like who else or something.
Is that on a RAW model or GPT?
Perplexity, just what
they give me. Got it.
So you might have to be specific. So like they're saying, maybe you can say, what was the Lakers game on this date?
Yeah.
Kind of like as if you were accessing the database.
Right. Great. Yeah, does anyone else have a?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm for models kind of having bounds imposed on them, and especially like regulation, I think, from some sort of governing body. But I'm very, very skeptical that that would ever really happen in the way it would need to, because of the potential for profit. I think that would potentially like completely override any bounds that would really need to be put on models. And yeah, honestly,
Are you
guess-
saying like a company, because companies want to make money,
Yeah,
they'll do things that aren't in the interest, like that interest going on?
yeah,
Yeah.
pretty much.
No, yeah, that's a good point. The interesting thing about like Twitter community notes is like, it's part of Twitter, but it's not, they don't actually make any money off it. So it's like perceived as, you know, this like, only like people contribute to it and there's no monetary incentives for them, even though at the end of the day, it does give them more money because it's making Twitter like more enjoyable for people. But I definitely like have thought a lot about the point that you made. And this is also like with OpenAI or Anthropic, like when they make alignment, they're at the end of the day trying to make more money. You could say they're trying to make more money because the better aligned their models are, more people will use it and then the more money. It could be a situation where it's like a win-win, but definitely a concern.
Yeah, I get very like skeptical when I hear the CEOs talking about, you know, how much they care about making it very like ethical and all these things.
Right.
'Cause I can't help but think that like, there's no way that that's really their primary goal, you know?
Right.
As a CEO, I mean, yeah.
I see, yeah, good point. Yeah.
So I guess building off of that, for, like, I know there's also like sponsors, ESP scores, for that kind of thing. But I like to. Are we still recording?
Yeah.
All right, turn it off. For his safety, I don't want him to get unemployed or the only ones who are responsible, we're responsible people for it. And in doing so, many there's been a lot of outcry and saying that this has been like a classic business strategy to appeal to the government, say that, oh, we need to be responsible for these things, but under the hood, it's them who wants the control, who wants to monopolize the steps of technology and profit off of it for as long as they can, which is why they're trying to shut down open source projects. And this has just been a huge controversy, or not necessarily controversy, it's been pretty one-sided, but like, I have to feel like that's just as important as the model alignment, like there's model alignment and then there's people making the models alignment. Like,
yeah, so I get your point. I think with regards to like the open source, like, you know, there's OpenAI and then they you know, it kind of, their company's not the same as it started. I do understand, like, I mean, my personal opinion, like why they had to raise a lot of money to bring in top tier engineers. I don't think we would be anywhere close to where we are if it was just an open source project, like just from open source projects, because I mean, it takes like hundreds of millions of dollars to get to where they are. And I understand why they need to do that. I think I haven't felt like their position is we're going to shut everyone completely off from making models. I think that they just have enough compute advantage and like talent advantage that open source models won't be catching up anytime soon to them. From what I've seen, or they're always going to be behind. You have to think that like if you have any company at AI, you must be better than the open source, because you're at least as good as the open source, right? If it's open, you already have that. So if you're going to make a company, you're just by default going to be better. I think there is like a huge range of, or a huge gap, but that's because I don't know, like in terms of a company, like they took a lot of risks in raising the money. There wasn't any guarantee that GPTs would succeed as they have, but it has worked that way. And I do think when they bring up regulations, like they honestly mean, this is not talking for the company, like anyone but me, but they honestly mean like they want to provide some sort of like government, so it's more safe for people. I don't think it's being like mischievous. They're doing Again, I don't represent them, so.
Yeah, yeah, I just wanted to hear like someone who's like actually been there, like I'm not
Oh, yeah.
really antagonizing, but like when I first heard that news, it got me kind of scared, cause like, are they gonna stop me from doing math, like?
Yeah, so that's kind of the goal, like, that's why I'm passionate about this, is because I also thought a lot, like, when I was making a line at the hackathon, like, the problem was, okay, there's so much talk about AI, but how come I don't get to see what is the, like, rule set for the RLHF training? Like, what rules do they tell the data labelers, like, you must follow this? Why do I keep getting, as a large language model, I cannot answer your question, like, I don't really think it's like necessary at that point. So that was like the goal of our project, and I think their democratic model inputs grant is like, they want to steer, not enough people knew about AI, I think. It wasn't a problem before, right? Like a year ago, it wasn't really much of a problem because no one was using it. So no one was thinking about this problem. But now that people use it, they're trying to come up with a solution. But it's hard. It's like,
So your Energize started as a project in a hackathon?
it was different. We did like in the hackathon, we built a GitHub for alignment. So like the idea was people can post their issues with the model, like if it says like as a large language model, I can't answer, and sort of like GitHub issue-esque way, and then other people can like upvote the issues, and then like AI labs can say like, oh, we should fix this issue, or we should it was basically like crowdsourcing model issues.
Oh, okay.
That was the part. It was, yeah, it was a bit different. Yeah. I guess I'm very curious, like, how people think about personalization. So should you be able to have, and this is like, again, nothing to do with OpenAI, but like, should you be able to have a model that's like just Republican or very much aligned to be Democrat or something, versus one global model for the people? Yeah.
I'm not really answering like should it not, I think it's just gonna happen regardless. There's just way too much incentive to that, for it to not happen. There's too many demographics that want something that perfectly matches what they believe.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think for the open source, they are pushing more models to be like more less aligned, like less bound. But that's just because I think as an open source, you don't really have the company to represent, or if the model says something super bad, it's no one's fault. Yeah.
There is still like benefit to like having models personalized, like say that you work a lot with like React, if it's like front end.
Yeah.
Like you want to like look up a lot of like front end stuff, so it helps to like have everything like tailored to you. And if like you're working on like a single like application, then like it helps. Like a single application, like your prompts are like all those applications. It helps to like have it all tailored to for like in this case, but then the main issues are like there's a lot of like biases that might involve. Like for example, YouTube, the personalization with YouTube can like lead you down to rabbit holes and like echo chambers that are not so good for like neutrality.
Yeah, I think like with personalization, like an interesting question is like, okay, what if models had like infinite context limits? Like, what if instead of every time you have to do a new chat in ChatGPT, you just continue one huge chat, and it will like just learn like over time, like the more you talk with it every day, it just learns you better. And so it's like if you were doing front end code and you talk about with front end a lot, it will just learn how you like to code, and you don't need to like transfer between the chats. But that's something that could be interesting if it gets that one. Yeah.
But then there's like I think there's a little bit of an issue with that, like, I guess the example you provided that like humans, we like to change. So let's say the model personalizes to myself, and it starts adopting bad programming practices. I'd rather the model just like be like, say, you suck, get good, like,
yeah.
Then feed into me and like, feed into my bad programming practices and be like, oh, you got this, you rock. Because in the end, I guess intention wise, when I'm programming, I'd rather build something that's really good and also like improve while I'm at it than not. And then also like if I want to implement some type of meaningful change in my life, I wouldn't want the model to stay with that inertia or whatever. And then also, for whatever circumstance or many circumstances, just people just like, well, I would say most people aren't on ChatGPT 24/7. So
Yeah.
It's not like the sample size of what you would have is necessarily representative of the whole population.
Yeah. There's this interesting project called Tab, I think, where it's this guy from Harvard, and he's making like this wearable device, and you just like wear it like a necklace, and it just listens to everything around you, and then it creates like a knowledge graph of every conversation you had. So you can be like, can you tell me what I need to do today? And I'll say, yeah, yesterday your professor said like you should do this homework assignment, and then they can start doing it, like they'll help you with it or something. But like the cool thing about these models is like, let's say you do have like, number one is you could tell the model like, this is how I want you to behave. Like I want you to tell me when my coding sucks. I want you to tell me, like, you have the freedom to do it, and then maybe you could follow it. You can also always make like a new chat. So like, let's say you don't want your main, you can have like a main chat with everything, and sometimes you want to like diverge and go back. So it's very cool to me. Like, I think a huge feature of ChatGPT is just that like new chat button, where it's like you just kind of come to a new context. I think that's like super refreshing to have, but it is also cool if it would really get to know you, because I like my responses like a certain way in ChatGPT. Like I always have to kind of correct it, and you can use the system prompt, but it's just annoying to keep specifying how you want it to behave. But over time, it really could learn like, hey, this person likes me when I likes it when I answer very short sentences, or I don't need to tell him I'm gonna write you this code. I'm just gonna write the code, and then you never have to explain that. It's fine. Yeah, there's so many like options that you can do. Yeah.
I think it's really interesting, like, we were having a conversation earlier about like education and how like AI could be kind of instrumental in that sense. So like, if you can have a tutor that could kind of adapt to your learning style and help you learn things better, like that could be very beneficial, and something that like a teacher who's trying to cater to like a whole classroom full of students, like it's gonna be difficult for them. But I think when we're talking about like personalization in particular, like it can be a very dangerous line. Like if you think about like the impacts of social media, especially when we were in quarantine, like how polarizing it was and how it was really difficult for people to kind of come together and agree on the same things and try and find middle ground, because like their algorithms would feed them things that they wanted to hear and feed to their biases, and it like it was hard to make any progress like as a society at that point. So it's like, how far do we want this to go, and like where is that line?
Yeah, that's a good, like, there's that movie, the documentary. There's a documentary about like the social,
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
like
It's
where
on
they,
Netflix.
yeah, they just say like
Social dilemma.
social dilemma. Yeah, I think where they're just saying like, yeah, your Instagram is just all your opinions that it seems like you like. So when you go on Instagram, you think that everyone around you thinks the same, but like really just like an isolated like capsule.
Yeah.
That can be dangerous with, I think, personalization. That's a good point. Because right now, if you do go to ChatGPT, at least you're kind of seeing all sides as best they can. So yeah, I really like I'm very passionate about the education. Hannah and I were talking about it. Like, I remember you said that it's important that you can see your professor, right? Like first just like talk to your ChatGPT and have it teach you. And I was thinking like, okay, what if in the Apple Vision headset, they make it so like you can have a fake professor in whatever, or like you have Barack Obama teach you physics on a whiteboard. And it's like, that would be kind of crazy. Yeah.
So like building off of like what you just said. Okay, so I like you guys have a tech stack. I have a learning stack when I'm going to learn something.
Yeah.
And one of the most helpful things I found was actually going on character.ai and have Shrek explain to me certain things. Because just the way he talks, like I could really understand what he's saying. Like I literally had him explain. I had him explain like when I read like the Vision Transformer or no, the Segformer paper. They had this like weird, they replaced the like little positional encoding with something different. And like I'm in a research project and it was presented to me at first like just regularly, and then I went to read the paper afterwards, and I got confused by a little bit of the stuff in there, so I just copied and pasted part of it and had Shrek explain it to me, and he explained it very clear, very blunt, and he got straight to the point, and you know, you can all like, I really like doing that.
I actually relate to that. Like, I don't do it with Shrek, but I do it like, I just go ChatGPT and I say like, explain to me like I'm a teenager or something. And a lot of times you'll realize like people in academia or when they publish papers, they like to like, you know, use big words or things that kind of make it more confusing. But if you have the humility to just go to Shrek or, you know, say like I'm a teenager, you actually learn things a lot quicker, because learning is just like getting like the basic ideas, and the faster you can extract, like digest the key points that usually are just loaded with access of like blah blah blah, right? You're just trying to extract it. AI has been like really good at doing exactly what you said. So yeah, I've this character AI have a wait list, or is it?
No, it's was actually bought out by Microsoft, I believe, too, recently. So no, like you can, at this point, it's been like it's almost like a semi-social media where you can share your conversations. Like you could talk to a table. There's a lot of things you can do with character.ai. Like you can put c.ai, and it'll redirect to that.
Very cool.
All right, so we have approached the end of our time here. This was a really great discussion. Thank you everyone so much for participating. Yeah, let's give, you know, another round of applause. Thank you.